Hi there, I'm Jill Blanchette with Green Thumb Stampers. I've got my Welcome In Paper Pumpkin Kit for June of 2023, and this is my first alternate right here. And I'm going to show you how I made it. I started with an 8.5 by 5.5 piece of Daffodil Delight. You can score it at 4 1/4 or just fold it in half. Be sure and burnish on that score line real good, that fold. I have a piece of the Calypso Coral card. I've cut it in half. I've cut it down to 4 inches wide, and I left it the full height right now. I'm going to take my card, and now, you know, you can do this. There's precise ways to do this. I'm eyeballing it, just so you know. You can make ticker marks, you know, wherever you want, but what I'm doing is I'm going to put the corner where we folded, and then I want my base to be up about 2 inches. So let's see, here's 2 inches. So I want to put that little fingernail mark I just did and the top of the card in my track, and we cut that off. So that's about, you know, what I want my card to look like. You can measure precisely and trim it. That's up to you. Then, like I said, I got this 4 inches wide. You can sort of tack it down if you want to. I'm not gonna, but I want it this type of a border around the side, but I'm gonna raise it up about double that, because when we come back down to glue it on, I want that same amount of border along the top. So I am going to tack it down just to show you how you, let's keep it there. So I got my 2 sides where I want them, and I got a double amount along the bottom. I'm going to push that in place so it stays there. Then I'm just going to line my card back up in that channel where I cut it the first time. And I'm going to cut the white card off, or the Calypso Coral card off. And then now we can glue it down, and we should have the right amount of space where we want it. And as I said, you can measure, you could do all kinds of precise tick marks and cuts. Sometimes it's just easier to do it like that, just to kind of eyeball it and not be so particular. Then I'm going to glue this on. So I need to move it over. There we go. So now we've got our 2 layers on there. I'm going to move to the inside now, just to get these pieces out of my way. I've got Calypso Coral at 5 1/4 by 4 inches. I'm going to go ahead and glue that in. I have a white piece to go on next that is 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. And I'm going to use my Love and Happiness stamp set. And I need some wedding cards, so I'm going to use my Calypso Coral ink with the Happy Anniversary, my love. So this isn't wedding, this is an anniversary, but I need those 2. And the only thing to note about this is that you want to make sure it's going to be low enough to be covered when you finish up your cards. So now I'm going to glue this down to the inside. Here. And then now we can complete the outside. I'm using this piece from the kit, and I did take a smaller one of the frames from the kit as well, because this one is bigger than what I wanted. So I grabbed one of the smaller ones, and I'm just going to cut around it to make the frame the size that I want it. So I'm just going to lay it on there and cut right up next to it. So hold on while I do that. I've been experimenting with this particular frame. So it's got ink all over the back of it from something else I was trying, and I just, see. So I cut it down to be a little bit smaller, not quite so large on the page. And I'm going to go ahead and glue that on. And let's see, we want to make sure that we don't get our glue on the above here, so it doesn't stick down to the back. So I made a couple marks, so we know now we want to put our glue in this area. I'm going to go with my tape again. I'm going to line that up, try and eyeball center, and straight up and down. That looks pretty good. My marks are covered. If they weren't covered, we'd want to erase them so you can't see them when it's open. And then now I've got a piece of scrap paper. We're going to use the vase that came in the stamps and Calypso Coral ink. And I'm going to stamp it down. And then I did buy the dies. There was an add-on pack of dies that you could get for this kit. I did buy those, and it cuts out the vase. And that's one of the dies. So we're going to run that through our mini die cut machine. So after you get it cut out, actually, if you want to do this next step before you cut it, that'll work too, because it might be a little easier to work with a larger piece of paper. But what we're going to do next is I've got some Sizzix Crystal Glaze. It's just like a clear, and a palette knife. Let me get a random piece of scrap paper I got sitting here. And then I'm just going to spread this glaze all over on this vase. And that's what's going to give it the shimmery, because it's got glitter in it. Can you see that? And so now this, you're going to need to let it dry. And then I'm going to scrape that up a little bit. And I'm going to use what I got on my knife, and I'm just going to dab it on these flowers. Smear it on the flower a little bit. Reach in, grab a little more if I need it. That's too big of a glob. And like I said, I'm just using this palette knife. You could use whatever works for you. I'm leaving this on a little bit thicker. In some spots, I just want to see. The other one, I spread it all around, and this one I want to see if it gives it more texture if I leave it thicker. All right. Getting that all off the knife. Put a little tiny bit more on this big one. Spread that around. There. Call that good. Close my glaze back up. It does dry out, as with all of our other materials like our embossing paste and stuff. You want to make sure to keep that airtight. So now I'm just going to leave this set aside to dry. I need to get my petal a little better, so we're going to let that dry, and then we'll put I didn't make one ahead of time, so let's see if I can do this. Let me get a dimensional, and I will just finish off the card while it's kind of still wet, just so you could see. So I'm going to put a dimensional on the back. And then we're just going to stick it underneath the flower pot. And then I have some jewels I found kind of hanging out on my desk, and they're on this small paper, so I'm thinking they're from another paper pumpkin kit. So I'm just going to place a few of them around on the card front. And I think I'll sprinkle in a few small ones as well. These big ones are really quite large. And we'll call it good. And then just set it aside to finish drying. And you've got your first card all set. Oh, and this paper's not all that thick. You could see it is, maybe you can't see it, but since this paste is wet, it is kind of starting to warp a little bit. So if in the end you need to, take a piece of basic white paper, put some glue on here, butt it right up to the line like that. And then this is not going to be white on this side, so, but then cut it off, and then that will reinforce the back of this. And that's what I did on this one, and I will show you. You can't even see that it's there, but it's reinforced the background of that. So there you have our first card.